resiliency of its community. Lisa began work on her project in the fall of 2021. She invited the community to be AP art of her art by contributing a piece of their own Ellicott City story. She received items from 80 people, along with their personal stories. She assembled the items and their stories in a one-of-a-kind piece of art to bring her vision together in this large-scale creation that you see here. We're so pleased that Lisa brought these colorful pieces of history together to create such a meaningful interpretation of Ellicott City to honor the 250th anniversary. And we couldn't be happier to know that it'll soon be installed on Main Street to enjoy during this commemorative year. Now, to tell you about her creative process and to share a few of the many stories behind the bits and pieces, join me in welcoming artist Lisa Scarbath.
Thank you, Vicki, Colleen, all the VIPs who are here this evening. That was a big surprise. I had to recover a little bit and change the end of my talk a little bit, so bear with me. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you to EC250 and the Arts Council for planning this evening. It's very exciting. It's my first artist talk, so I've done a few Zooms to Mosaic artists, but not to lay people, and people who have interests of all kinds. So I hope you find what I have to tell you about my project interesting. So when I started thinking about what I wanted to say, I was thinking about history and catchy things to say, and this idea popped in my head, and I remembered a plate, a decorative plate that my grandmother had sitting on the wall next to her refrigerator. And it said a quote from, I didn't know at the time, but now I know, John Lennon. And it said, "Count your age by friends, not years. Count your life by smiles, not tears." And that popped in my head, and I went, yeah, that's right. And it should apply to history as well. And we should measure history not by dates and facts, but by lives lived and memories made and shared with each other. And that's what I wanted to create with my project. For example, one of my favorite stories is a memento that was shared with me that gives the personal history of a whole family. And it's this little piece right here. Hopefully you can see it. Yeah, and I got it and I went, what is this? And then I read the story and it's amazing. It started several years ago when she was 17. Is anyone here who gave that? Okay. She was 17 and he was 19 and they met on Main Street. He was home from college and they met on Main Street for a date and they had their first kiss while she was wearing that lip gloss. And they became boyfriend and girlfriend, and now years later they're married and have 3 kids. So touching, it's such a happy story. So I know many of you here contributed pieces, so I hope I know what each of you created. If I haven't met you yet, please make sure you come up and say hi to me later because I want to meet you in person and thank you. I was really honored that more than 80 people and organizations contributed items for me to include in my work of art and entrusted me with telling your story and your history of Ellicott City. My story involves Ellicott City as well. My husband Steve is in the back, and our 3 kids have lived here, their entire lives, but for the last 22 years. And before that, both sets of my parents lived here for decades. So my Ellicott City history goes way, way back to like the 1940s. In fact, my grandmother collected these little figurines that used to come in Tetley tea boxes, and her turtle is right here. She's in one with the plate. I've I've been a resident artist here since July of 2020 during the pandemic, and it was completely quiet, and we were all covered up. And so it's so nice here to have people here and events, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of the Howard County Arts Council. I know that several of our other residents, as you can see the art from everybody here, and several of the residents are here. Joyce is over there, and I saw Andre and Asma and Mary Jo, and some other people might be in the back. So please feel free to visit our studios down the hall on that side of the building and say hi. My studio's open. You can go in there and check out some of my other work after the talk. So before I became a resident artist here, I actually had 2 other careers. I started out as a criminal defense attorney and then transitioned to a professor of undergrad law classes. You guys are all ready for a 3-hour lecture. Just kidding, like 15 minutes. The last time I taught was fall of 2019, and I made the decision, with the blessing of my family, to commit to creating my mosaics full time. Things have just exploded since then. It's the best decision I ever made. Pull myself together. I'm primarily self-taught, but I find opportunities to learn every time I can. So the inspiration for this project came in February of 2021. I was attending the Society of American Mosaic Artists International Conference virtually, and I heard about projects that other mosaic artists had completed, including community sourcing projects, and then other artists who also did community projects involving people making mosaics as a means to healing the community after tragedy like wildfires in Australia and California and mudslides. So immediately, my thoughts went to our wonderful historic town who suffered floods 2016 and 2018, and I thought, this is the 5th year anniversary, I should do something. And then I learned, well, it's right in between the 2 floods, the 5-year anniversary. I learned about the 250th anniversary, and the light bulb went off, and I went, okay, let's combine everything. And I articulated my concept, and then I asked Colleen about it, and then I went to EC250 and explained my idea about doing this mosaic and asking the community for stuff and stories, and asked for their endorsement, and they willingly gave it. And then I went to the Maryland State Arts Council and I applied for a creativity grant, which I was awarded to help offset some of the costs of my time and materials in creating this project. So it started back in February of 2021, and then I got my act together. I got all my ducks in a row, and started getting the word out in June of 2021. And I created, with the help of friends, of course, I do all this alone, flyers that hopefully some of you saw these. I went door to door on Main Street giving them to all of the businesses. I stuck them in mailboxes. I just walked the streets. And then I emailed everybody that I could, every government official that I could get through to, posted on social media, had the Arts Council put it out, every way that I could to get the word out, to say everybody was invited to send me your stuff and your stories. Anybody who felt like Ellicott City was special to them, whether it's your home or where you worked, or just having visited at any point. So 5 months is the length of time that I collected the stuff and stories. It kind of went a little longer than I had originally anticipated, because once the word started getting out, then I got a bit of media attention, and I wasn't going to turn that down or turn down any things. So once I shut off the time of collection, it was in November, and I photographed and I cataloged everything with the help of a volunteer. And that is what you see if you scan the QR code there or on the podium. And it'll take you to my website that has every object that was donated, contributed, and every story as well, so you can take your time. There are over 80 And some are a line or two, and some are a page long, so they're really good reading. So we transcribe those and put it all into a document. So as I was collecting all of this material, I thought, what am I going to make? What am I going to do with all this stuff? And I can't let anybody down, and the pressure. So I just took my time and collected, and I came up with the idea of a map of sorts. My first thought was, if you go to an amusement park and you see the out-of-scale maps with circles and the different places, that's kind of what I wanted to do. And Ellicott City is chock full of historic places and iconic images. So I narrowed it down, and a lot of different factors went into which ones I chose, and this is what I came up with, and hopefully they're recognizable. So I went around town taking pictures, and I used those pictures on my computer to scale down, because when I came up with this idea, I knew my time was limited, and I didn't want at that time to start with a place to make it for, because I knew that was going to take a long time. So I went, okay, my goal is to make it for this exhibit, and then I would find a home for it. Kind of backwards of a lot of mosaic projects, but that's what I did. I jumped in with both feet. So I was limited. Each of the residents gets 90 linear inches. So I went with that. And I scaled my pictures down, made a map on my computer, and then I had to scale back up. So I had to use my non-existent math skills, and I created paper patterns that I hand drew and cut out from paper, and then I had to trace them onto my substrate, or the backer board. I brought a little sample to show you, because does anybody do mosaic? Oh, I see a few hands. Yeah, I see a few hands. So this is called Wedi Board, and this is what I used as the backer board. You might be familiar with, in the tile section at like Home Depot, they have the backer board that you use for your bathrooms, and it's cement board. This is a lot lighter. It's got a foam core on the inside, and then a layer of mesh and concrete. And so it's actually easy to cut, scoring and snapping, or I used a little hand saw to cut out my different shapes for my patterns. So this is what I used, and it's kind of lightweight because, as you can imagine, with all the material that's on it, these mosaics can get pretty heavy. This one is just over 25 pounds, and same with the Main Street. So I traced my patterns, I cut out my substrate, and then I had to prepare the edges. You can't see the blue. I had to use mesh tape to put around the edges, and then thin set that I tinted black to cover up. So a lot of steps along the way to do a mosaic. And then, of course, you can't forget to install the hanging hardware. Because if you put all the material on top, the tessera, and then go, uh-oh, it's sometimes hard to pry off because it is like concrete. So I put in extra hanging hardware because I wasn't sure at the time how it was going to be hung. And then, since I still wasn't sure what the finished product was going to look like, I wanted to make sure I had some labels on my individual pieces. And so I went, this is now the holidays, and I happened to be on Main Street, and I went to the playground, and I said, what's involved with making a ceramic tile, word tile? And Michael explained all of the steps to me, and then I started panicking, going, I have never worked with clay, and I'm going to have time to get this done. No problem. We'll get it done. We'll get it done. I signed up for class, and then at the beginning of the year, and then the instructor got sick. So they canceled, and I'm like, no problem, I'm busy. They said, we'll get it done. The next week, I got another email. Instructor's still sick. We're canceling again. And I emailed back, no. So they brought me in, virtually walked me through the process. I hand stamped all my tiles and created these labels, and thank you, they got it done for me in time so that I could insert them into each of the parts. So then I had my design made. I'm backing up a little bit to November, and I'm like, okay, now I have all my stuff. I have it labeled. What am I going to do with all the stuff? I knew I wanted to kind of hide it within my designs. So I laid out everything that was contributed in my studio, on the floor, on the tables, and started looking at it. And I just stood back and looked at it for a few days. And I realized that some of the items had stories behind them that dictated where they would be placed. And that was kind of in my head as I picked out which images I would depict. For example, this beautiful figurine that some of you may have seen in the paper was contributed by a family who suffered loss. And as part of the therapy to get over that loss, she would walk along the river and pick up treasures. And she shared those treasures with me to put in this piece. So that is a super recognizable piece. A lot of other things go along with it. Look for that story. As well as a friend contributed this Janet doll. I can call you out, Janet. It was a beautiful Royal Dalton figurine that was broken, and I thought, what better figure to put in the cabin than this figurine? So Janet now lives permanently in our Ellicott City cabin. Thank you. Then the other pieces, I just intuitively knew based on the character of the piece, the color, the shape, all of those sorts of things. For example, this pin, the bicentennial bell, it's a pin with a little bell hanging, and I thought, what a perfect replacement for the bell in the tower of the Firehouse Museum. And likewise, this beautiful frog. Someone who has lived in Ellicott City for 40 years contributed, and the frog naturally had to go in the river along with a couple of other frogs representing the Forest Hill swim team. Composition, I received a tiger's eye, beautiful, beautiful stones down here from someone whose whose son was dubbed Tiger by her father, and he was the first grandson that grandfather had met before he passed away. So that was super special to include, but it fit really well into the rock wall below the Firehouse Museum. And then the post office box door, contributed by EC250, was the perfect replacement for the door of the Firehouse Museum because of its size. It was super heavy, so I had to cut the back off, and that was, lessons learned there too, but it did really well. And then some of the shapes. This medallion that's in the middle of the clock has a clock face on it, and it was contributed by former county executive Alan Kittleman, representing the 2016 floods. And it was made to honor that, and it was lost and those who came together. And the circle gave me the idea, well, let's fill up the rest of the clock with circle items, and some people contributed clock faces, an HCPSS 20-year pin, and some other exciting things that are in there as well. Likewise, the shape of the base of a candlestick that was contributed was the perfect dome top for the top of the silos that are on the flour mill. And then color was another consideration. The vivid blues I put in the river. One exciting piece, and I promised her, she can't be here, but if she sees it in the video, I promised her today I would talk about it, but an owner of a store that was formerly on Main Street, Margaret Smith Gallery, hopefully I got it. Oh! She had Jodie Benson, who was the voice of The Little Mermaid, come to the store. And to commemorate that event, she had vivid blue wine glasses made with a gold embossed The Little Mermaid. And so that is up here, and the base of the wine glasses here as well. So as I, fit where everything was going to go, it all came together, and I started creating. one piece at a time, and I actually went in this direction as I was creating them. The bulk of the items are in the river because so many of them were related to the river or had those beautiful colors that I wanted to include in the river. Everything, 98% of this was hand cut by me with wheeled nippers, which are the standard tool for stained glass artists and mosaic artists, along with the traditional hammer and hardy, but that's heavy, I didn't bring that in here. So hand cut, a lot of hand cutting with my wheeled nippers. A few of the things I needed to use my wet saw, including cutting that wine glass because I wanted to make sure that I got the wording of the Little Mermaid included. A couple other things I had to cut with my wet saw. Well, one other thing was this wonderful miniature teapot that was contributed to represent Teal the tiger. It's no longer there. Yes, and many people. I did too. So I was thrilled that I could cut it just so the handle is still intact and it's flat on that side to attach in the mosaic. So, and then the other thing that I used, I received a giant bowl with it. It was beautiful. It was this big. I asked for things that were like the size of your hand, but I got this beautiful bowl, and I thought, I can't break this. It's too pretty. But it had this beautiful bubble pattern in it. It was a big crab. So I stuck it in a garbage bag and did what everybody thinks mosaics is, and I just hit it with a hammer and took the pieces out and stuck it in. I did have to cut some of it with my hammers. I used a variety of other material to fill in, and I think I included almost every kind of material that I use in my mosaics. I don't always use them all in a mosaic like this, but I used stained glass. I have samples. So I used stained glass. This is in the cabin, in the roof, and the door. It's actually, you can see it's brown. Yeah, but it's hard to see. It's really textured, really cool. Marble that I used up at the Patapsco Female Institute. Slate, just a regular slate roofing tile that I cut. This I do cut with my wet saw to get into manageable pieces and then cut it apart with that. But that's the road for the Main Street. And then the Firehouse Museum, this plates that I broke up. And then of course some more river glass, and that you see in here, I had to fill in with a little bit. And then vitreous glass tiles come like this, and then I hand cut them into slivers to create the train car. Yeah, so lots and lots of cutting each piece, the labor of love. Sorry, that's so loud. The one unifying material that is found in each of the 6 parts is mirror. And I use that intentionally so that the viewer sees themselves in the history of Ellicott City. And so that you know you're creating today the history of tomorrow. So I was really excited when I finished and I got to see all 6 pieces hanging on the wall as I conceived from that first cut and paste and on my computer. And it just warmed my heart to see it all together. Really cool thing, the day that the exhibit opened, I was here and this group of women specifically came in just because they knew that the gallery was here and that it was the opening day. They knew nothing about my project and they were looking around and they were like, oh, that's neat. And then they went, wait a minute, that's a crab mallet. And then they started, and I just happened to overhear, and I started talking to them. So it was so neat to hear them say, oh, look, it's a mosaic. Oh, yeah. Oh, what's in there? Because that's the neat thing about mosaics. It looks like something, and then you take another look, and you see all the somethings that make up the bigger something. And that's what is so exciting about mosaics to me. They're really hard to photograph, as the photographer and I were talking about, especially with mirrors in them. So it's so much better to see in person. And hopefully all of you who contributed pieces were able to find yours within, like crosses in the church, frogs in the garden, in the river, pieces in the river. If you didn't find it, let me know and I'll help you. Because some of them are harder than others. I had someone contribute a whole plate that was part of their wedding registry, and I cut up the plate, and it is now the siding on the school. So luckily that person came in and I got to explain that to him. So a lot of fun. Overall, this project was so special to me because I learned a lot and grew as an artist. Every single time I picked up my nippers, from start to finish, this project was a learning experience for me, and every day was problem solving. And there are some things I would do differently, of course. There are some things I learned from, but in the end, I'm happy with the result, and I hope that everybody contributed as well. So I was going to end with asking for a permanent home, but you know, this project's going to have a home for the rest of the year, so I'm thrilled about that. But what was most important to me was that I got to hear so many personal stories that everyone was willing to share. And some of the themes that went through are tragedy, joy, family, growth, business, nature, personal reflection, resilience, community, and above all, a sense of home. So thank you all for listening.
Anybody have any questions for Lisa about the project? She's going to be around. We have a whole other hour. We have wonderful charcuterie trays out there for everyone to enjoy, individually packaged. As you know, we had drinks. You have an hour to see all the wonderful work here. Talk to Lisa about this. Get up close and take a look at everything that's included in here. Look, you know this is close to my heart. You know that. We've talked personally, and I can't thank you enough on behalf of EC250. She came to us. She came out of the blue. We didn't go to her. This is what we want the celebration to be about. We want everyone to embrace what we're doing, and she just took it to the nth degree. And so, can we have another round of applause? You can come up also. This is just a very small token of EC250's appreciation for what you've done to raise up this anniversary year, Lisa, and for this wonderful project. I'm so very happy it's going to be on Main Street. I cannot tell you. So please, I'd like to present one of our commemorative ornaments, which we have out there to Lisa and to Colleen for being such a wonderful partner in this project. So anyone else like something or available out there, and please pick up one of our commemorative magazines. It's free. It has a